I'm gonna dance by myself like nobody's watching. Don't really care if my rhythm's off, 'cause I'm gonna dance like nobody's watching.
Well, hello, my lovelies. It's Janet Perez with the Painted Saguaro, and this is just going to be a kind of a brief tutorial on how to fill out the edges of a decoupage paper. I've already adhered the paper to a board, and this is the backboard for a bookcase that I've painted, and I'm going to show this to you at a later date because it is a paint couture project. But I wanted to show you this process because I have promised a few people that I would show this. So essentially, all you want to do is just find colors that match and carry them on out to the edges if you want to do a complete paint out to the edges. This particular decoupage paper is a whimsical paper. I believe it's called Maiden Serenade, and she's beautiful. And she's got the skull, and you'll see in a little bit, she kind of cuts off at about her waistline. And what I did is I carried her dress down to the bottom of the board. And because this is a bookcase and I'm not good at painting hands and her hand is cut off at the knuckle, I was going to try to paint her hand, but I said I'm not a good enough artist to do that. So basically I just laid the book over her hands on her lap. And it doesn't really show anyway, so we're all good with that. But what I'm using is I'm just using paint couture paints here, and I'm kind of blending the colors as need be. I'm using British Gray and Driftwood, which are perfect colors for the background on this. And initially what I did was I kind of drew out the twigs and the branches, but obviously I'm painting over those because I'm going to have to fill those in later. But I just kind of wanted to get an idea of the composition of this piece. And so that's all it really requires to do on it is just, mix your paints on the paper and or on the dresser or on whatever it is you're working on. Again, this is the backboard for a bookcase. The original backboard was cardboard, so I just completely tossed that. I went to Home Depot and I had them cut me a piece to size to fit and decoupaged this piece on. And there's that space right there, mainly because there's a shelf that goes right along that section. And initially I thought that I might try to do something kind of tricky with it, but I opted not to do that. So just ignore that gap there. It's not going to show in the end anyway, but so you'll see that it's painting in really beautifully. If this were on the front of a dresser, I would have taken a wet paintbrush and frayed the edges of the paper and torn it just ever so much, just so that I didn't have a straight flat edge. But quite honestly, because this was going up on the back of the bookcase, you're not going to see those edges anyway, so I really didn't even worry about that aspect of it. And this is really all there is to it. It's just a matter of painting, and you don't really require any talent other than just seeing the color and, trying to color match the color with the paints that you have on hand. I have used acrylic paints, and you can go to Hobby Lobby or you can go to Michael's, or even I think Walmart sometimes sells them around the holidays, those little acrylic paint kits with the little tiny acrylic tubes where you get all the colors and you can blend your own. But I typically like to use the chalk style paints or the mineral acrylic paints that I have from the paint manufacturer Paint Couture, because they're matte finish, number one, and number two, they just tend to blend better on the board and on the paper. So you'll see in a second that I like to also kind of blend into the paper a bit and kind of carry that color onto the paper so that it even looks more blended. And that's really all that's required. It's not rocket science. I am not an artist. I cannot draw more than a stick figure. So there's no talent required here. It's just a matter of seeing the colors and blending them. So you can sit here and you can watch me do this for a few minutes and just see how it's done. It's very, very simple. I'm using, I started out with a fuller size brush for the bigger areas that needed to be covered. And now I'm using just a smaller artist brush. And I get all my brushes at Hobby Lobby when they're on sale. I have a huge bucket. You can see sort of to the left there. I've got a huge bucket full of a variety of paintbrushes. And I go through a bunch of them constantly all day long every day. So you can see here, I'm just kind of dragging those colors into the body of where the paper is, the decoupage paper is, just to make sure that it, fully looks blended, even if I'm not doing a 100% color match. And you cannot tell. And just kind of stippling or dabbing the paintbrush so that you don't have brush strokes. You just have that kind of dotted, stippled look is all that it's really required. And once this paint dries, you will not see that stippling whatsoever. And you can always take a bigger, softer brush once you do this stippling and kind of go over it. Sort of like when you're doing makeup for women who are watching this. Sorry, guys. But when you're doing makeup, if you do like a foundation or a concealer and then you pat over it with a soft brush, it kind of blends it all in. You can certainly do that on here too. So it was very simple to do this paper, and it's a little more challenging when you get down to the dress. And I didn't show the painting of the dress itself, but it was very similar in technique as to how I painted the linen dresser that you saw on my last video, where I just did a lot of crisscross dry brushing to sort of get the same texture that's in the skirt. Now see, you can see here I drew in the hand over the book because that's how I initially wanted it. But I just, I couldn't get... I watched a couple of videos on how to paint hands, but I just didn't have the patience or the tolerance. And I thought, okay, this piece is literally for my granddaughter and she wouldn't care. So I didn't really need to master how to paint a hand on this piece. So I bailed on it. Sorry, Bella, I love you. But you can see here I am just kind of filling in those twigs and going for it. It gets darker down at the bottom, but you can see the skirt or the base of the dress, and there's a lot of, kind of like a lacy overtone and a darker undertone and lots of layers to this skirt. And I believe I was really able to capture that pretty well with the texturing that I did with the crisscross dry brushing over the gray. And it wasn't difficult at all. So it's really all that there is to it. It's just a matter of using your paints that you have on hand and going for it. If you have any questions in regards to this, or you ever get stuck trying to do a paint completion on a decoupage paper, you need help coming up with a color. I know some people do face challenges when they're trying to conceptualize how to make a color, and I understand that. I don't typically have a problem creating colors. In fact, I love mixing colors and coming up with my own unique colors. But if you ever do have a question and need some help with that, please message me. I'm more than happy to help you with that and help you create a custom color that you might need. So don't ever hesitate to ask me a question if you have one. But this is a black brown color that I'm using here because that background color wasn't completely black and it wasn't completely brown. So I'm using espresso mixed with pitch black from Paint Couture. And that's how I get that. And then you can see where I created that deep fold in the dress with that same color. And kind of drew in the lines that I wanted with the dress with the pencil. And that's really all that there is to it.